In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I painted this blue orchid in Inktense. I'm Abigail and I make weekly art tutorials, demonstrations, and more, so if you would like to learn how to improve your art skills, start now by clicking the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Now on to this demonstration. To start this project, I freehanded my sketch outline onto a sheet of watercolor paper, then I taped down the edges to reduce how much the paper buckles when I add water and paint later. Next, I went through and lightened up my sketch outline with a kneaded eraser. If you are unfamiliar with a kneaded eraser, then consider checking out this video where I explain what it is and how to use it. Next, I mixed up all my paint colors before painting. By mixing the colors first, it makes it easier to use certain techniques, like the wet on wet technique. Speaking of this technique, I use the wet on wet technique to block in the background around the flower. If you would like to know more about this technique and over 20 watercolor techniques, then consider checking out this video. Moving on, after the background has dried, I start to block in the general lights and darks in each of my petals with blue. Now to make this simpler, I just use one hue of blue, but altered the value of the color by adding different amounts of water. For the darker values, I use the paint straight from the block with very little water added to it. Then I made lighter values from that darker one by adding more water to the dark paint. If you would like to know more about hues, value, and other aspects of color theory, then consider checking out this video that explains all of that. One of the biggest tips I can give you is to start lighter and then gradually darken up your values as you need to. It is much easier to darken up an area that you made too light in comparison to if you had to lighten up an area due to going too dark in the beginning. If you would like to see other tips and tricks for using watercolor, then consider checking out this video. After I've blocked in my highlights and shadows in each of the petals, I let that dry and then went through and loosely painted in my blades of grass with light green. Then I went back and refined the values and details in each of the petals with watercolor pencils. Now with watercolor pencils, there are many different techniques that you can do with them, but in general, you need to choose between using the pencils dry or wet. In this project, I chose to use them dry, which allowed me to leave those pencil strokes showing through, giving the appearance of veins in the petals. I went through with a light blue in the midtone areas and a dark blue in my shadow areas, then overlapped them to create subtle transitions between each area. If you don't know what a midtone is, then feel free to check out this video that explains it briefly. Moving on, I added a peach color to the highlights to reflect the background, making the flower look as though it was part of the background and not just a sticker on top of it. Next, I went through and added shadows to my grass with a dark green watercolor pencil. I then let that dry thoroughly and removed the tape, leaving a nice clean border around my painting. And that is it for this demonstration. If you enjoyed it, consider checking out this other demonstration or this playlist of other tutorials that explains many different aspects of watercolor to help you feel more comfortable using the medium. Also, feel free to share any of your questions in the comments. Until next time, God bless.